Innovation, disruption, and big issues. This is Business Game Changers with Sarah Westall.
Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. Today we're going to have Stein, who is an emotional intelligence expert. He has done a lot of research in what makes organizations and people emotionally healthy and how to deal with really difficult situations and be able to get through it in an emotionally healthy way. I think we have so many difficult situations going on now, whether it is in your organizations with people being laid off, difficult time getting jobs, or if your organization is thriving and growing, how do you deal with the emotional challenges of that? I talked to him about those things, but I also talked to him what happens if we have a financial collapse this fall. How do we deal with the emotional intelligence? How do we deal with that and get through it in a healthy way? And we talk about it from a community standpoint and things. I really think this is an important conversation and something that I think is what we're missing in a lot of areas of our society. I think people that are doing kind of psychopathic things are emotionally or mentally ill and sick and can't see that in themselves. And having emotional intelligence in a healthy environment is what can solve a lot of these problems. But I want to challenge you to get through the first part of this because we talk a little bit about Trump and you're not going to be happy. A lot of my listeners are not going to be happy with what his views are from a political standpoint. But I'm going to challenge you to get through that and say, okay, I don't care what somebody thinks politically. They might not be on the same political spectrum as me, but their information that they have is good and it can be healthy. You might not agree with some of their assessments when it comes to big corporations, but okay, so what? Because their information when it comes about emotional health and emotional intelligence is really good and it can help all of us. And it's a way of bridging people and ideas and for everybody to learn and get a little farther along. So let's not waste much more time and let's get into the interview now with Stein. Hi, Steve. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Sarah. Great to be with you.
You are an expert on emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence and why is it potentially more important than normal intelligence and other traits that we may have?
Okay, so to make it simple, because there's a number of different definitions of emotional intelligence, there's three basic things that, cover all the different definitions. The first is the ability to be aware of your own emotions and the emotions of people around you, of other people. The second is the ability to manage your own emotions as well as manage the emotions of others around you. And the third is the ability to use emotions to either get things done, make decisions, deal with stress, motivate yourself. So that's in a nutshell the definition.
Well, we've seen a lot of emotions lately, with the election. And then afterwards, I think there's just a heightened emotions everywhere. I think that businesses and marketing teams have gotten really good at figuring out how to use emotions, and especially in their advertising and their narratives. You did quite a bit of research into what voters want in a president. And can you tell us about that research and what you found?
Sure. So I focused on, I thought this would be an unusual time, of course, in terms of the election that was coming up. And in September, during the campaign, we did a survey of 1,000 voters, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 Republican, and 1/3 Independent. And we started off by giving them a list of the 15 different factors of emotional intelligence. And we asked them, which of these are important for you in terms of a president? And there was a lot of consistency, believe it or not, among the different factions in terms of which factors they felt were important. Then we did a second study, again, with another 1,000 voters, broken up in the same way, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And we asked them to rate each of the candidates for their emotional intelligence. So the Republicans rated both Hillary and Donald and vice versa for the Democrats. And we compared the way they looked and wanted to see if what Americans thought were important for a president were the same things that they actually voted for in a president.
So what was the result of all of that?
Well, the results were, the ideal president is obviously very far from what we got or from what people had a choice between. Let me put it that way. So they really wanted somebody who was, good at managing solutions, good at empathy, listening to people, self-aware, all those, interpersonal skills pretty well across the board. Almost every one of the emotional intelligence skills, except one was lowest of them all, which was emotional expression, the ability to express yourself emotionally. Well, interestingly, that's the one area where Donald Trump seemed to come up stronger than Hillary Clinton did, as well as he had much lower impulse control. So those two areas seem to be the biggest differentiators between the candidates. And whether people knew it or not, they seem to want a president who was very expressive in terms of his emotions, had low impulse control, as we see with a lot of the tweets that have been going on for quite a while now. Those were the characteristics. Those are two of the characteristics that really differentiated. There were others as well. Neither of them had seen as having a lot of empathy, but Clinton was seen as having more empathy than Trump did. And, there's a few other little differences as well.
And was empathy something that they rated high?
No, they're both rated fairly low in empathy.
Oh, okay. So did you happen to look at other candidates as well? Like, where did Obama come out on that and other candidates, or were you just really focusing on the current election?
No, we focused on the current election because we thought that would be, this was a historic moment. I didn't think we'd ever see an election like this for some time. And it seems to be, and speaking to other researchers who've looked at this, it's a major shift in the whole world of elections. Things are different now. Everything from speaking patterns, like all the science seems to show that the whole political spectrum is changing. And I think emotional intelligence is a big part of this.
So what are you seeing that's changing? I think everybody's observing change and seeing something completely different. But being a researcher, how do you put some tangible elements to that?
Well, one of the similarities I see, because the other part of the work I do is in reality TV shows. I do a lot of screening for many different reality shows. And I'm finding that a lot of that is reflected in what we're seeing in the political scene. The kinds of characters who become popular in reality TV shows have these same characteristics as what we're now seeing in these political campaigns as being popular and important. This high emotional expression, explosiveness, low impulse control. These are the factors that seem to be differentiating people, and we're going to see more and more of that in the electoral world.
Well, how do you feel about that? Being an expert on emotional intelligence and what it takes to be somebody who can really build a great business or a great organization, how does that relate to what factors people are looking at and are valuing versus what it takes to actually run something well?
Well, it's unfortunate. It's not good, and that's why we want to get this message out so people are aware of that we're kind of picking on the wrong qualities for the ones that are leading to success in business. The factors that lead to success in business are very different. When we studied CEOs of successful companies, for example, we found that empathy differentiated our more profitable CEOs from our less profitable CEOs. We found that interpersonal skills were really important in the corporate world. So it's a very different picture. Self-regard, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. Humility is important in the corporate world. It's not coming up as important what we're seeing in the political world.
And are you seeing that across the board? Now, it's not, you're using the Trump-Hillary campaign, but you're seeing that across the board when we're talking about governor positions, senators, congressmen?
I think it will be transcending to some degree. People are worried about what they call the Trump effect in terms of, how they respond to it, how they respond to the electorate. Who's becoming popular, who's becoming less popular. It's such a divisiveness right now in the political arena. I don't think we've really seen anything like this before in terms of the divisiveness of what we're seeing.
Well, I think that the people who really like Trump liked the fact that he was addressing a lot of things that politicians have never addressed before, like the globalists and making America first and all these other messages Now, those messages don't necessarily need to be tied to the emotional intelligence things that you're talking about. It just happened to be this time. So, do you know what I'm saying? Is there a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's one other component that he came up strong in, and that's what we call independence, which speaks to sort of what he refers to as political correctness, being sort of anti-political correctness. So if you score high in independence, you sort of march to your own drummer. You go in your own direction. So on the one hand, you're saying, the content may change, but the way in which you express it may make the difference. So if we take another candidate with a different point of view, who's also high in emotional expression, high in independence, low in impulse control, will that candidate be as popular as someone that we've seen? That's a good question. That would be a great research study that we'd like to carry out and see what the weight is in terms of the actual policies. We thought that the research would really be most important for the independents because, most of the Republicans and Democrats have already decided pretty much where they're going. So we're really aiming at that sort of semi-undecided voices, those independents, to see if this would sway them to one way or the other.
Well, independence is a much larger group than Republicans and Democrats. And a lot of people are moving towards independence. They just want people who can think on their own and not follow a big party. And I think that is, the key, I think. But you're saying that there's a lot more to this, and people are attracted to the person based on a lot of these traits, which aren't necessarily tied to success.
Well, in this case, they seem to be in politics a lot more. But in a business, we've seen sometimes these traits are tied to success as well. And Trump did come from the business world. And there are, and more so in the past, business people were very narcissistic and were able to sort of push their way up the ladder and treat people badly and all that kind of stuff. That's changing. I think that whole landscape is changing. More quickly, of course, in the business world.
Yeah, I think ethics and behavior and things are pretty strong in the business world, but there are a lot of business, and when you look at what's going on around the world, some of the abuses around the world, you start to wonder what's really going on behind closed doors,
Yeah, and that's probably happened for a long time.
Well, yeah. Now it's maybe just a little bit more open because of the internet. Well, let's look at a couple things. Currently most people think that the country's leadership, Congress, and basically all politicians are there's corruption and it runs rampant. Political ads and current media they support this, and it's mostly negative, and it brings out very strong emotions. I mean, this has been a cycle. I saw it a lot with the seats running for Congress, really strong emotions, governor seats, very negative, trying to bring out emotions on both sides. How do we get past that and analyze it critically analyze it without getting angry or stressed? Because there's a lot more stress and anxiety right now.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to get out of, and I guess we should limit this to U.S. politics because the negative advertising is used because it works. In the U.S., it's very popular and it works. Up in Canada, for example, it's a very different situation. Justin Trudeau won with a very different campaign. Canadians respond differently to those messages. They get turned off by a lot of these negative messages for the most part, and it worked against the Conservative Party this time. So it's a very big American thing right now to go for the emotion, to go for the negative ads, to put the other guy down. And it's working, and that's why they keep doing it. I think it's a matter, if you want to change that, I think it's really a matter of educating people and having them be more critical about what the politicians are actually saying and what they tend to do and how that may affect you personally and the world around you.
Well, do you think with all the negative ads, or not ads anymore, but the negative coverage of Trump? Because Harvard just did a big study that showed that the negative coverage of Trump is it's like 96% on CNN. And I mean, it's very, very high. Even Fox was more negative than positive. Do you see a backlash in that way where people, even though maybe people don't like Trump, that they just the negative is just over the top and there's a backlash towards that? Because personally, I have a hard time with all that negative. After all, he's our president, and it's just hurting us if we're just going to constantly be negative.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty unique situation where you're getting all that press, and my guess is that people will tire of that as time goes on, because you can't just keep going that way, saying that everything's bad, everything he does is bad. Unfortunately, he feeds into it by some of the tweets, by going after people that insult him or whatever with these tweets and focusing on insignificant things, instead of focusing on the big issues and staying with the big issues and not getting distracted from it. So it's kind of a self-feeding thing. If someone maybe controlled his tweets better and he focused more on getting things done and what are the issues that people really care about, that may dissipate some of this. But at this point, it's hard to see it going away. They're just feeding into each other.
Well, do you think sometimes that he's letting some of these narratives go so that he can focus on other things and just kind of distract people?
That may be, someone mentioned that earlier to me, that may be a strategy. The media is bad on X, so hit him with Y, say something stupid about Y and distract everybody to go in that direction. So he may just tire the media out because every day they're chasing some new silly thing that he tweeted or whatever. That may be a strategy. Who knows? It's not a very good strategy in the long run, though.
Well, we have really serious issues facing this country, and strong leadership is needed, not just in the presidency, but everywhere. How does one maintain courage in difficult situations when hard decisions need to be made, where perhaps your life may be on the line? You're standing up against brutal wars that you don't believe in. Maybe you're being blackmailed. Illegal or corrupt activities against nefarious characters that you're trying to deal with. How do you maintain the courage and the emotional intelligence when it gets very difficult?
Well, that's when it really kicks in, and that's what the third thing I mentioned is using emotions, whether it's to get things done or to deal with these kinds of situations. So one is good stress tolerance. You can't lose it. You got to keep calm and cool and collect. You got to be able to analyze the facts. The other area I talk about for leaders is to surround themselves with the best people they could find, the best advisors. In business, it would be the best financial people, the best marketing people, and so on. In politics, it might be the best military people, the best, diplomats, the best whatever. But you want to get really solid, good people behind you, because you're the one who's going to have to filter the information. You're not going to be the expert on all that information coming in towards you. So a leader has to be cool, calm, collect, analyze the facts, know how much emotion to use when making decisions. Every decision we make involves some element of emotion. Our lower brain kicks in with some element of emotion. So just by trying to be too logical is not the way to go, because your emotions are kicking in and you're not aware of it. By being over-emotional, that's not the way to go, because your emotions take charge of the decision. So it's really balancing your emotion to help the logic go forward. And that's what we try and teach people in terms of emotional intelligence.
Well, are you seeing it play out now where, just like this last campaign, and when the negative ads and the emotion and the tweeting and all the media is all negative, do you see are people just all reacting on emotions right now? Not just Trump, but everybody?
Oh, I think they are. I mean, I don't think you can really have, a calm conversation about politics with someone on the other side right now. It gets very heated very quickly. So emotion kicks in fast. People react to these candidates, react emotionally very quickly. So, the amount of discussion about the actual issues was quite minimal. And I think that sort of goes to the point how important emotion has become in these things. And we have to learn how to manage and maybe in some cases diffuse the emotional component so we can hear each other, we can discuss things with each other.
Well, yeah, because we have to get past the fact that we love a candidate to a point or really support a candidate and look at what the issues are that are being discussed, and that we can actually have a meaningful conversation and stop insulting each other to the nth degree, because I think that's what's happening now. I know that when I'll publish something that is against, it's not even against one person, but it goes, they think it's against a person because it's a narrative that the people that are against them might be supporting. and then I get blasted in comments. And so it's important that we can put our emotions aside and actually look at these issues and not get so emotionally tied to somebody that you can't see straight, right? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at.
And that's the skill, like of the 15 skills, that's the one we call assertiveness, the ability to express your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs in a calm, organized way, right? And not to get triggered or pushed your button. And as long as you have that assertiveness skill, you're able to manage that. You're able to keep calm and have this discussion and stick to what's really important instead of the emotional triggers. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have not yet developed this skill to this point now, and they just react to the trigger.
Well, how about the building up of stress? It's like the soldiers that are going into combat over and over and over again, and it's to a point where they have to have military dogs and psychologists out there with them because they know that they've gone into combat too many times just to make sure that they don't lose it. And they're coming back and the suicide rates are over the top, and it's crazy. How do they maintain their stress levels over a long period of time and be able to make decisions, when it's pushing the boundaries of what's humanly healthy?
Right. So there's a couple ways of doing that. Traditionally, the way we've dealt with stress, is obviously to reduce it, bring it down. Relaxation, meditation, mindfulness, all these techniques. So they try and get you more in control of the stress. But there's some new research now, which is really interesting, which is talking about reevaluating the stress. So instead of seeing this as, I'm in a stressful situation, there may be enemy around me, I could be blown up at any minute, to reevaluate this as, for example, a game. This is a computer game that I'm playing. This is not real. You redefine the situation, and this could be in any situation, a military situation, a workplace situation, where if you redefine the stress as a challenge, as something to overcome, as something exciting, there's actual research that show people who do this, they actually live longer and they're healthier than the people who get stressed out by these same situations.
So you figure out a way to turn it into a challenge that is much healthier than something where you're running around with fear on a nonstop basis.
Exactly. So, I could be leading an organization and it looks like, the place is exploding and everything's terrible. So I turn that around and say, okay, let's suppose this is a board game or a computer game. What would be the moves that I would make to get out of this? And to just reevaluate it from a totally different perspective, take some of that negative emotion out of it, use it as excitement. I'm going to win this. I'm going to find a way to win this challenge. The people who do that are the most successful at getting through those particular challenges.
Well, and it's kind of, you're tricking yourself, right? You're kind of living in an illusion, but that might be okay because it might be just as real as the fear that you're feeling, right? As long as you're looking at it, even though you're putting it into a different light, it's still the reality that you're putting into it differently. You can't imagine you're in a different place. You have to look at reality, but look at it from a more positive, strategic standpoint, like a game versus fear.
Exactly. And, we found the same thing when we studied optimists and pessimists. What we've discovered is optimists they're not into reality, right? They see things with rose-colored glasses sometimes. The pessimists see the real world often. I mean, they're often depressed. They're depressed because they look at what's really there and they say, my God, this is depressing. The reality is the optimists do better, right? Even though they're not in the real situation in the real world. That's why you have accountants and lawyers who are prone to depression more than other occupations. They look at what's really there, what's really happening in situations. Look for the worst scenarios. Whereas the optimists, they get through this stuff. I mean, they may be in la la land, but they get through it. They can navigate these difficult situations.
Well, but you kind of have to be an optimist to go after changing the world to a certain degree. But if you don't acknowledge reality, then you're not really fixing the problems. You're just kind of truly in la la land. So how do you go about facing reality enough to see the problems, but protecting yourself enough to not shut down and become depressed?
Well, that's what we call balance. So when we measure emotional intelligence with the tool we use is the EQI, the emotional quotient inventory. We have a factor that measures optimism, and we have a factor that measures reality testing. And we look at the balance between those. So if your optimism is really high and your reality testing is really low, we tell you to stay away from casinos. You're going to lose all your money probably. So we try and get those in sync. So I'm still optimistic, although I can see the real situation. I'm not blinding myself as to what's going on. It's all about balance. And so much of emotional intelligence is really about balance, balancing these different emotions with getting the right emotion that you need for the right activity at the right time.
Well, okay, let's get into a serious issue that there's a lot of a lot of economists out there saying that we're going to have a financial meltdown this fall. I mean, there's a lot of people saying this. How do you manage the stress of that and get through that and come out on the other end in a positive way? Like, what emotions will we be feeling, and how can we manage those emotions so that we're productive?
All right, so the first emotions we feel often are dread and fear and, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this thing? And it's the negative side of emotions that we start with. And once we've gone through a period of that, we have to start thinking differently and moving those emotions along, out of the way, and changing them. And we change them by saying, okay, I know times are bad and I know things are bad, but you know what? In past recessions, there have been some companies that have done really well. There have been people who know how to take advantage of these times and these situations. They have done smart things. Many startups, I think Microsoft was started during a recession. There are many examples of companies that got their start during recession, or they stop and do their R&D during a recession. They retool, they refit, they use that time productively. And you've got to change your mindset to do that. You've got to become more optimistic about it.
Well, so basically, should you look at the opportunities that are unfolding in front of you? I mean, what happens if you didn't plan well enough and then all of a sudden there you are? Now you got to manage. And that happens a lot everywhere, right? You didn't plan well enough and then all of a sudden there you are. How do you manage through that?
It's time to retool. You have to sit back and retool. You have to plan it out again. You've got to start with something else. You've got to change that script. It's never too late to plan, right? We like to plan earlier, and we do a lot of our planning earlier, a year or two in advance. And if it doesn't work out, we're able to shift along the way. But the whole thing today is about being agile, and that's what agility is all about. We try something, it doesn't work, we shift it. We try something else, it doesn't work, we shift it. We have to move quickly, and your organization has to be agile. You have to be agile in order to survive in the world today. Flexibility is what we measure in emotional intelligence, your ability to change and adapt.
Well, and businesses aren't loyal, and employees aren't loyal to each other, right? It's not like it used to be where you might work for a company your whole life and whatever. People aren't loyal to each other. Corporations aren't loyal to employees. Employees aren't loyal to companies. Mm-hmm. So you have to be prepared that maybe the whole organization might be laid off. And you kind of have to look at yourself more as an entrepreneur, as an employee. Is that correct? And how do you manage that?
We do that in our own organization, where we have about 150 employees. We see everybody as an entrepreneur. We help them, we teach them business plans, we teach them the things they need, whether you're a computer programmer, whether you're a designer, business development person, customer service person. In our organization, they all get to think of themselves as mini entrepreneurs. Now, my CEO friends will say, wow, that's dangerous. Like, you're just training them all to leave you right after you do all that training. But the other side of the coin is if you don't train, they're going to leave you anyway, or for sure. And we have many more people applying to work with us than we have leaving us. So we just find it's worth the investment to encourage people to be entrepreneurial in the way they approach things. And we have benefited so much from that, because these people come up with so many ideas, whether it's new products or new ways, system approaches. I can't tell you how much money we've probably earned as a result of the creativity of these people that we've made into mini entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think encouraging people to be independent and thinking on their own and being creative, you actually benefit from that than holding people down.
Absolutely. We go one step further. It's not just about being independent. We have a hackathon once a year where we put people form teams, and they come up with ideas, with new product ideas or process ideas. And we actually do a competition where they once a year where they'll present these ideas to the senior management team and outside judges for prizes to come up with these ideas. And it's amazing to see the amount of excitement and the amount of engagement that our staff have when given the opportunity to be creative and come up with ideas, but work as a team with their fellow employees.
Yeah, it's a healthy, you got a healthy thing going on. So that's really great. Good for you, because you're talking in a very healthy way. So how do we do that at a national level? Because right now, what you're talking about at your company level is very healthy, and that's what we would like to have at more of a national level when we're talking about things, but we have completely devolved into an unhealthy state. Have you thought about how it can be applied more at a bigger picture level?
That would be really tough. I mean, at this point, you have two sides that don't even talk to each other. So I guess at one point, you've got to have I'll call it an ambassador. You've got to get somebody who's friendly to both sides, is trusted, and one of those big things we find in emotional intelligence is authenticity. You've got to be trusted and believed. Who could kind of walk between the two camps, who could really kind of find the areas of cooperation between them. It's almost like magical thinking to come up with this, but if there's such a high-profile person in the country, like an Oprah Winfrey, who everybody loves and everybody trusts, but who's trusted by both sides and can do that walk between, I think you'd need something like that to start building the bridges. But you also need a lot of cooperation from both sides.
Well, it seems like we've devolved in the public life, and whereas business has, a lot of the corporate environments have really improved and are healthy, like what you're talking about. And there's a disconnect now. There's a big gap between public life and what's going on in a lot of these healthy organizations. And if we could just take some of that healthy community stuff and put it into other areas of our world, it would be much, much better. And I think part of the thing is if we can get some of those people that are in these healthy organizations to help fix some of these problems that we have. You know, I didn't realize how many problems we have until I started covering them. It's kind of like a lawyer. They're the people who are not in la la land are the ones who are actually in the thick of it, and they get to see everything. And maybe that's part of my issue is I'm seeing everything now, and so whoa, it's hard to deal with. And you see so many healthy, like the organizations that you're part of and that you're trying to help people with are so healthy. That's what we need to bring to more environments so that we have more of that healthy emotional environment.
Well, I guess one suggestion is to take people out of these, succeeding environments, take people out of, I don't know what I'd like to say, Google and Facebook and Microsoft and some of these places, and have them be part of the solution somehow, put them together and help work this out. Because a lot of them, I mean, Google's got a great environment. Everyone wants to work there. And a number of these organizations have developed really exciting environments, as we strive to do. And you might need some of the leaders of these organizations to kind of step up and start to offer solutions.
And I think, there's a lot of people are scared of technology right now. Like when you look at the way Google, kind of like with Snowden coming out and people thinking Google and Facebook and stuff are censoring everybody. So there has to be a way to bring some of these healthy environments without scaring the heck out of people. You know what I mean? Because I hope you understand what I'm talking about, because those are some of our issues too, is that people feel like there's a big disconnect and a lot of fear with where technology is going. I see a lot of both sides, and I guess I don't know how to solve all these problems. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about with this emotional, you go in and help create very healthy environments. How do you do that in a bigger space? And I guess that's the challenge for people like you, is to figure out how to do it in a bigger space. Because I think that's our challenge. And we're doing it in smaller corporate environments, but we're not doing it at large, and we have so many big issues that we aren't solving.
Yeah, one of the problems may be that some of the people capable of solving these problems don't want to go into that arena. I mean, really, who wants to go into politics, right?
I do know that, yes.
Yeah. So some of us I know are successful at leading organizations. I mean, that would not be my first choice to enter the political arena. You know, you're going to pay a huge price for doing that. So it's very safe if you're successful at running an organization to stay with doing that. It's going to be a big risk to step out of there and enter the political arena because you know you're going to get criticized no matter what you do or what you say. You can't really win.
Well, but it's not necessarily just about running Congress or running for Congress or doing something. It's also about, you know, like in our child welfare system where we have over half of those kids have been, you know, sexually abused. There's trauma. It's terrible. You know, or mass incarceration. I mean, there's a lot of issues that really intelligent, well-adjusted, good people could start getting involved in and fix it. They'd go in and go, oh my God, I didn't realize it was this bad. And they'd be able to solve a lot of these problems. It doesn't have to be necessarily running for Congress, but it is getting involved in maybe the boards of these organizations and starting to help them run these things better.
No, you're right. I mean, I sit on the board of a child welfare agency, so I see that.
You see what I'm talking about.
I see exactly what you're talking about. And when we see those kinds of problems, we try and implement solutions immediately. I mean, absolutely. We think in a business way in a child welfare situation, and it makes a huge difference. We see it in our accreditations, how our accreditations are when outside people come and look at the work that we've done. But you've got to get more people to volunteer and to do that kind of work. You've got to make it enticing somehow. You've got to, develop this wish to serve, wanting to serve the community in some way.
And I think that's what we need, because I've kind of run into a wall because I'm a business person too. I've run a company. I've worked in large companies. I teach at a university. And then I run into this wall where I'm covering all these issues that are, oh my God, I didn't realize all this stuff was out there. And I'm realizing more and more where it takes these people who really are healthy, mentally healthy. It takes mentally healthy people to really make good change, right? They're going to run into a wall too and some cognitive dissonance and realize, oh my God, I didn't realize it was this bad. But they're mentally healthy and they're strong and they're smart, and so they can make a big difference. And that's what we're lacking. And, people like you who are teaching these people how to be mentally healthy, how can we stay mentally healthy while we're doing these things? Because so many of the problems stem from being mentally unhealthy. Absolutely.
There are solutions. That's all I can tell you. And I see them. We just got involved with a project now for homeless women, where a woman who made it in the high-tech world, became very successful, decided to leave that and start this nonprofit. And the reason she did that is because she was homeless herself early in her life. Nobody knew that before. And what she's doing is she's taking coaches, business coaches, and matching them one-on-one with homeless women. So they're using business coaches to teach these women to be self-sufficient in a way that hasn't been done before. And we're helping her by assessing all these people, by helping her evaluate the program, looking at the outcome and the results. And she's been showing some real interesting changes in these women and some findings in them getting off the welfare system, being much more self-sufficient. But you need people like that to step up and to go forward and start these innovative programs. And they've got, and when they're innovative like that, with people with the right kind of makeup and experience, you can just accomplish so much.
Well, where do you see the leadership in this country? I mean, I'm kind of a little bit down on it, but I think we're trying to take a positive spin where we do have we have a growing base of very healthy, well-trained people that could make a difference, and this growing base of people who aren't healthy, who aren't trained, who are very struggling. So where do you see the leadership in this country, and are you seeing emotional intelligence being valued and used on a more regular basis?
I think we're seeing it more valued and used in the corporate world, and we're seeing a lot of development of leadership. Now, again, I may have a bit of a sort of a blinkered view because I only see the organizations that call me, and I only get called by the ones that are good, right? So I don't see a lot of the faltering ones that are dying and suffering. My
The ones that
colleagues,
really need you
the
probably
ones that
don't
really
call
need me,
you.
yeah, they don't call because they think they know it all, so we don't hear from them. We're so busy with the ones who are good and want to get better. And we see great programs set up for emerging leaders, emerging leadership, because too often they would put someone in the position before they were ready. They didn't teach them all the emotional skills they need to be a good leader. So we're working with a lot of those programs, and we're putting in simulation projects, and we're putting in all kinds of trainings and things that are helping them just hum along. How do you deal with the losers, the ones who don't see the need for this, who don't? I think the only way you're gonna, change them is when they get hit in the head, when their staff are leaving, walking out the door, they can't get good people, their numbers are going down in terms of their sales, and they're just not being successful eventually, or they'll just have to get rid of their current leadership and the new crop because the millennials are so different, and they won't stand for that kind of stuff. They won't stand for a workplace that doesn't care about them. They won't stand for a workplace that treats them badly. They'll just leave, and the talent won't be there. And it's amazing when I look across different organizations, and if we just take high tech, we see the companies that have a lineup of young, brilliant programmers who want to work there versus these other companies that they can't find talent. They keep telling me, why can't I find talent? There's no programmers out there. I said, you're only 10 miles from where we are, and we have a lineup of programmers who want to come in this place. Obviously, there's something wrong with the way you're organized or managing your organization. So we're seeing that, and it's changing, and we're seeing it more. When I started talking about this stuff 25 years ago, people thought I was crazy. Like, emotion in the workplace? What are you, nuts? And we've seen such a turnaround now, and survey after survey by Deloitte and by others are showing that emotional intelligence is in the top 5 of the characteristics they want to see in their new leaders.
Well, I think being happy, having high emotional intelligence is probably the means of having a healthy family, of having healthy friendships, of having so many things in life that are healthy. I think I'm to the point where I think it's the key to almost everything. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the problems that are happening in the world is because somebody's mentally sick and they don't know they are, and they're in this matrix and they're doing these things and they're just mentally sick, and we're struggling with their mental illness and they don't know they are, and we don't know how to shake them out of it. And so having these healthy strategies of teaching people how to be healthy, I think that's the key. But how do you do it in a way that, to deal with when people don't even know that's their problem?
Right, and part of it's scalability too, because of the vast numbers of them. And I think we're going to see better solutions with that as we do more stuff online, as we reach more people. We're going to see that improve. I think it's going to get better. It's just going to take some time. And if you're one of those sort of pessimistic, angry, unhappy people, and you see those people across the street are always laughing and happy and doing well and making money and whatever, someday you're going to scratch your head and say, why am I so miserable, and why are those people happy all the time? And that may start to unlock the door for what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's the key. So what can people do as we close out? We have a little bit of time here to talk about what people can do to help with their own emotional intelligence. How can they be better equipped to build strong communities and organizations and not get so frustrated?
Right. Well, the first step we start with is self-awareness. The one is to just be aware of your own emotions and what you're going through and what you're feeling. And if you find yourself, you think about the political situation and you find yourself getting angry or out of control, you've got to manage that. You got to say, hey, wait a minute, why am I going crazy over this? Why is this worth it for me to ruin my health because of that? So you've got to learn to bring yourself down, calm yourself down. That's kind of the first thing you've got to work at and practice. So let them say terrible political things to you and you keep calm. If you can manage to do that, you're getting through the first step. The second step would have to do with interpersonal skills and relationships. And what I'd recommend there is just empathy. To train yourself to listen to other people and try and figure out where they're coming from without involving yourself in that, right? Without you taking on those emotions. So if you could just sort of learn where they're coming from, then you'll be much better off in terms of dealing with people who are different from you or have, other ways of doing things. So those are kind of 2 ways to start. Start by understanding your own emotions and trying to then sort of manage them, and then start by trying to understand other people a little bit better and figure out where they're coming from and bring your own temperature down. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your hormones. It's not good for your body. Just think of it from that level. I know you want to save the world, but right now think of saving yourself. And you're not going to save the world by blowing up your body. So keep that in mind and practice those two skills.
Well, I think a lot of doctors have issues with that because there's always life and death on the line. And I know a lot of doctors who have become physically ill, have developed cancer, or their thyroid has shut down, or they develop all these nervous tics because of the system that they're part of. And it's such a stressful environment. They don't get the healthcare system needs some help. And they don't get the time with their clients. It's just, there's a lot of issues there. And so for them, what do you say to somebody like them who's always dealing with some life or death situation?
Some of them may have to reevaluate the nature of the work they're doing. I mean, if it's that bad and they can't deal with the situation, they may have to readapt to another part of medicine or dealing with another kind of patient, another system where they're getting paid differently. A lot of my physician friends, some of them have decided to retire because of the stress of it, but other ones have redefined themselves. They're doing different things. They're using their medical training to work in industry, to just do totally different things. And, they're so happy. They're so happy if they make that transition. They said, man, I can't believe that I did. I worked in that emergency room for 10 years and, was going crazy with that stuff. So it can be done. You just have to decide that, hey, listen, I've had enough of this. And I've got a lot of good skills. I'm a good person. I want to do the right thing. I just got to find the right way to do it.
Well, and I think that some people thrive in those emergency environments, but for the others, it's like any other business and any other thing. If it's not right for you, you need to move out. And so emotional intelligence is knowing also, and correct me if I'm wrong, knowing when the environment might not be right for you, even if it is right for somebody else, and knowing where you fit best. Is that?
Absolutely.
And with self-awareness?
Yep, absolutely. That's part of self-awareness, which includes self-actualization that we talk about, knowing that you're doing the right thing at the right place. But, the interesting thing about what you say, what we find in the emergency room, it's not the stress of the patients and all the work and people coming in with gunshot wounds. That's not what burns them out so much. It's the bureaucracy and the administration.
Exactly.
That's what kills them, right?
Yes.
So that you have to really see what the problem is, and then you can deal better with what's best for you.
So in those kind of situations where the bureaucracy, I already know me. I know that bureaucracy, if I have to deal with that on a continuous basis, I can deal with it, but as soon as it starts getting really dumb, like they're making really dumb decisions because of the bureaucracy, I have to pull myself out of it and be in a more entrepreneurial, independent environment where we can make smart decisions and not be bogged down with, and eventually a bureaucracy, maybe you can convince them to make good decisions, but that process is very painful for me. So I think I'm self-aware enough to know that I can't be part of that.
Right.
Right? So what you're saying is maybe these doctors really love emergency room stuff, but they got to be in a different kind of structure.
Exactly. And you've got it. You have like a natural emotional intelligence because you can sense that in yourself and pull yourself out of it and do what fits you much better.
So how can people learn more about you? Do you have workshops? Do you have things where they can learn? Because I got to tell you, I think things are just going to get more and more tense. I taught ethics at the university because it's one of the things I've taught. There's a tsunami of new technologies coming. There's a light and a dark side to new technologies. And we're seeing that with surveillance, NSA type stuff. And there's a lot of good things from it. There's some bad stuff. But there's some new technologies coming that are even more impactful on humans that are coming. Now, so how can people start to equip themselves for that and get serious? And even, people who are really emotionally healthy, how can they start to equip themselves to deal with others that are going to be struggling? Because this is where people like you, people who have a lot of ethical training, people who understand how to help manage change in a healthy way, this is where you have become much more important. So how can we tap into that?
So there's a couple things. My website is drstevenstein.com, and my book, which is the EQ Leader. And in the EQ Leader, we talk about a lot of these skills and how to develop these skills with certain techniques and things you can try. And after that, our organization helps people in terms of actual assessments, is what we focus on. And in organizations, our work is really geared towards or focused on organizations. So we help organizations develop emotionally intelligent leaders. We have simulation that they can put people through in a day or a half a day or 2 days that help them learn these skills and practice them in a safe environment. And then coaching is an important aspect of improving emotional intelligence. So the proper assessment, the proper coaching, directions. The good news is this stuff is all developable. We've documented, other researchers have documented that you can see huge changes in people once they go through this kind of a training and experience to improve their emotional intelligence and be better leaders and better people.
And it's not just about leadership, it's about being happier and better people and better spouses and better parents and everything else, right?
Yeah, that's a thing that we hear constantly. While we work in the business environment, they come back and say, you know what? I was a little more patient with my kid when they wanted help for the homework. I was actually able to listen and pay attention to what she was saying to me. And we get all these stories about how it affected them at home. The husband learns how to deal with the spouse better and saying, I don't go back and just tell her how to solve her problems anymore. Now I actually listen to what she's trying to tell me before I provide any advice. All of these things that we're used to doing that may have been bad habits, we can change those habits.
Well, we're animals, and it's learning how to evolve as more intellectual beings and get onto a higher level of consciousness, and not just go running with our animal instincts.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It's the right level of consciousness, and it's not just our cognitive consciousness, it's our emotional consciousness as well.
Which is almost more important. Because that we do without, it triggers us doing things without even thinking. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I will have your contact information up here. I'll have it on my webpage and on the video, and people will know how to get your book and to reach you. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Sarah. It's been great meeting you and being on your show, and it's just been terrific.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Okay, hold on.